You're looking at the morning headlines.
Yeah.
You see the mugshots, the press conference.
Yeah.
You see the district attorney standing there behind a podium talking about cleaning up the streets and, dismantling criminal enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
It feels good, right?
Yeah.
It hits that part of your brain that wants order. It feels like justice.
That's exactly what it's designed to do. That's the official story. It's a narrative that's built to make us feel safe.
But, and this is the question that honestly kept me up last night, reading through the stack you sent over, what if that headline isn't just a little bit off?
Yeah, okay.
What if it's actively hiding the opposite truth? What if a huge prosecution wasn't about stopping crime, but about, quote, prosecuting survival?
That is the massive, uncomfortable claim at the heart of document we're looking at today. It's a text called The Revelation, The State versus Black Stability.
Wow.
And I have to say, we cover a lot of legal commentary on this show. Usually it's dry, it's procedural.
Very law school. Yeah.
This is not that. This is a scorching, really comprehensive indictment of the state.
It really pulls no punches. It specifically goes after the DA of Sultan County, Fani Willis, and her huge REO prosecution of YSL, or Young Slime Life.
Correct. The text argues that the state basically criminalized success and put political ambition way ahead of actual public safety.
So it frames the whole thing as a clash.
Exactly. A clash between that official story, what we all see on the news, and a revealed truth that's buried under all the legal jargon.
And our mission today is to dig that truth out. We're going to unpack the argument that YSL wasn't a gang, but an economic engine. We'll look at the controversy over using rap lyrics and what the source calls phantom emojis as evidence.
And it gets heavier. We're going to have to talk about the ethics of plea deals and how the source claims they were used to weaponize fatherhood.
And, maybe the most surprising part, the direct line the source draws between the YSL case and the prosecution of Donald Trump.
It's a lot.
It is a lot to get through, and to be honest, it challenges so many of the default assumptions people probably have about this.
Yeah.
So, let's just get into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, I want to start at the foundation. This lie of public safety. Because if you ask anyone on the street what the YSL case is about, they'll say, it's about taking a violent gang off the streets to save Atlanta.
Right. That's the pitch.
That's what was on the news.
And it's the standard prosecutorial narrative, You find the bad guys, you take them away, and poof, the community's safer.
But this source material just completely flips that on its head.
It does. It argues YSL wasn't a criminal enterprise in the way we think of one. It was an economic engine.
Okay, wait. I have to play devil's advocate here immediately. We are talking about a group that the police have labeled a street gang.
Mm-hmm.
How does a gang become an economic engine? Is the source just trying to glorify crime money? That sounds like a stretch.
I get that reaction. It's the natural one. But the text is asking us to look at the context of Zone 3 in Atlanta. This is a historically under-resourced area.
Right.
You don't have venture capitalists walking around handing out seed money. It's not easy to get traditional bank loans.
So it's an economic desert, basically.
Exactly. And in that desert, the argument is that YSL was an exit strategy. The text actually talks about converting street capital into legal wealth.
Okay, explain that.
Think about it this way. In a community where the normal ladder to success is, broken or just not there, YSL built their own. They took influence and money from the gray economy of the streets and funneled it into legitimate businesses, into music, real estate, merchandise.
So moving from the corner to the boardroom, so to speak, laundering the reputation along with the money.
The source frames it as stabilization. It claims that by targeting YSL, the DA didn't remove predators, she removed providers. Yeah. There's this really powerful analogy in the text that stuck with me. It says the prosecution burned down the ladder while claiming to save the people stuck in the hole.
That is a very vivid image. Burn down the ladder.
It speaks to how fragile that stability was. The source argues this prosecution attacked the whole economic ecosystem of that neighborhood.
So if you take away the group that's providing opportunities, hiring locals for security, for logistics, creating a path from the street to the music industry.
You aren't saving the community. You're trapping it.
So in the eyes of this text, the public safety argument is a lie because the prosecution actually destabilized Zone 3. It took away the people bringing resources in.
Precisely. It argues she attacked the neighborhood success story because it didn't look like the kind of success the state approves of.
Okay, so if the motivation is suspect, the source argues the methods are even worse. And that brings us to the lie of evidence.
Yes.
This is where the text gets into what it calls digital hallucinations.
Digital hallucinations. I mean, it sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. A glitch in the Matrix.
It does, but we're talking about a real courtroom. What does the source mean by that?
It's a critique of how this whole RIKO case was built. The source argues the foundation isn't hard facts, ballistics, DNA, fingerprints on a weapon.
The stuff you see on CSI.
Right. It says the case is built on creative writing. It claims that when the state couldn't find a crime that directly linked everyone in a conspiracy, it invented a context.
Let's use Exhibit A from the text. Slime Life Shoddy. This part was infuriating to read. It details how he was denied bond, separated from his 4 kids.
Right, and bond denial is serious. Usually means you're a flight risk or real danger.
And the justification for it. The source says it was based on a threatening emoji text.
A text message with a scary emoji. But here's the revealed truth, according to our source.
Go on.
He never sent it.
Wait, what? He didn't send it, at all.
The text calls it a phantom emoji. The argument is the state used a digital artifact that either didn't exist how they presented it or wasn't even from him to paint him as a community danger.
So they took a digital ghost.
And used it to keep a father in a cage.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
You have a man in a cell, missing his kids' birthdays, losing years of his life because of a glitch or a straight-up fabrication.
That's the allegation.
Correct.
The source says they used a digital hallucination to justify a very real imprisonment. It's creative writing with devastating consequences.
And that leads right into Exhibit B, Young Thug. This is the debate we've heard about using rap lyrics in court. But the source puts it so starkly. It says he's facing life because his lyrics were twisted from artistic expression into confession.
It's the criminalization of art. The analysis here implies the prosecution is just taking creative output, storytelling, metaphor, a persona, and treating it like a historical autobiography.
It's like arresting a horror novelist for murder because they wrote a graphic scene in their book.
Or an actor who plays a villain. That's the analogy.
Yep.
The source concludes this part by saying, when the state cannot find a crime, it invents a context. They didn't find the truth. They scripted a fiction. The narrative of the violent gang is a story written by the prosecution using lyrics and misidentified text as plot points because they didn't have the evidence to write a nonfiction book.
Okay, so if the evidence is creative writing, then how do you get convictions? Because, and this is the part that I think confuses people, they did get plea deals. Gunna took one, Slime Life Shoddy took one.
Right.
And the average person thinks, well, if they took a plea, they must be guilty. Case closed.
That is the official story. The story goes, they realized they were wrong, they admitted it, and they took the deal to pay their debt to society.
But the source says absolutely not. It calls these ransom payments.
Ransom payments. I mean, just think about that framing. This brings us to part 3, the lie of consent. The source argues that Fani Willis weaponized fatherhood.
Let's go back to Slime Life Shoddy. The text says Willis knew he was a stabilizer for his family. She knew those kids needed him.
And that became the leverage. The argument is that she held his children's future hostage. The only way for him to get back to them, to be a father again, was to agree to sign her fabrication.
So he had to brand himself a felon. He had to stand up in court and say, yes, I am a criminal, not because he was actually guilty of the big ICO charge, but because that was the price of admission to see his kids again.
Exactly. The text uses this absolutely devastating phrase here. She monetized their love to buy her conviction rate.
Monetize their love. Wow, that puts a completely different spin on what we think of as justice in a plea deal.
It's not about accountability, it's about extraction.
So the plea deal isn't a legal instrument.
It's not an agreement between two equal parties. The source frames it as a coercive tool used against family units. It suggests the state exploited the bond between a father and his children just to get a win on paper.
It really makes you wonder how many confessions in the system are just people paying a ransom to get their lives back.
That is the darker implication, yes.
And speaking of wins and ambition, this is where the source takes a pivot that I just did not see coming.
Right.
We've been talking Zone 3, YSL, rappers, and then the text draws a direct line to Donald Trump.
Yes, the lie of justice for all is a fascinating connection. I had to read this section twice because on the surface, Young Thug and Donald Trump, they don't seem to exist in the same universe.
Not at all. One is a hip-hop artist from Atlanta. The other is a former president, a billionaire. What is the thread connecting them here?
The source argues they are two sides of the same coin, a coin that's used to buy political fame The text calls the Trump prosecution a campaign ad.
A campaign ad. So the argument is this wasn't really about the law at all.
It argues Willis pursued Trump not because she thought she could win. The source is actually very dismissive of her chances, but because it made her famous. It was a political vanity project.
But what about the argument that no one is above the law? That prosecuting a former president shows the system works.
That's the official story. But the revealed truth, according to this source, points to resource allocation. It's not just about fame, it's about cost.
Okay.
The source highlights that millions of taxpayer dollars were siphoned away from critical needs in Fulton County.
What kind of needs are we talking about?
We're talking about money that was meant to fix the jail, which is notoriously dangerous and overcrowded money, to process a huge backlog of rape kits, money to solve actual cold body murders.
So real public safety issues affecting everyday people were just ignored.
That's the claim. The argument is that instead of fixing the jail where people are literally dying, that money was used to fund what the source calls a national media tour through these huge Arroyo cases.
The comparison the text makes is it's really striking. It said she treated the president like a prop for her career.
And she treated the rapper like a raw material for her prison complex. It's a critique of dehumanization, all in the name of ambition. Whether you're a former president or a rapper, the source argues you're just a tool, a stepping stone.
It paints a picture of a prosecutor who is less concerned with the law and much more concerned with the spotlight. It's almost Machiavellian.
It is, and that leads us to the verdict. Not the court's verdict, but the structural verdict that the source presents.
The psychology of the overseer.
This is the why. Why go after YSL? Why go after Trump? The source argues it all comes down to control.
The overseer. That is a very, very charged term.
It is loaded with historical weight. It's a direct reference to the plantation overseer. The theory here is that Willis represents a specific psychological archetype. She saw young black men getting power, money, influence without the state's permission. That's YSL. They built their own ladder.
And her instinct wasn't to celebrate it.
Her instinct was to crush it because it was outside of her control.
And the same logic applies to Trump.
In the source's view, yes. She saw a political figure challenging the system, disrupting the status quo, and her instinct was to silence him. It's about maintaining the state's monopoly on power. The overseer can't tolerate anyone who gets too big, whether they're a rapper from Zone 3 or a populist politician.
There's a metaphor here that wraps it all up. Salt versus poison.
Right. The pitch, what she sells to the public, is salt. I am cleaning the streets. Salt preserves, it cleans, it's seen as necessary.
But the reality, the source says, is poison.
I am criminalizing success. That's the poison. The source argues that while she claimed to be healing the city, she was actually feeding it something toxic. She was destroying the very mechanisms of survival and calling it justice.
So we get to the end of the document. The source concludes that the YSL trial was never really a trial at all.
No, it calls it a social engineering experiment gone wrong.
A social engineering experiment. That implies she was trying to reshape society, not just enforce laws.
Exactly. It was an attempt to prove that the state can rewrite reality. That it can turn a song into a murder, a father into a danger, a text message into a weapon. It was a test of the state's raw power to define what is true.
But the source says the experiment failed. Why? If she got the plea deals, didn't she win in a way?
The source says the fabrication was just too heavy. It collapsed under its own weight. It points to Slime Life Shotty's innocence, breaking that violent gang narrative people saw through the phantom emoji.
Right.
It points to the truth coming out from other witnesses on the stand who refused to stick to the state's script.
And the chaos surrounding the Trump case, that broke the narrative of the invincible prosecutor.
The veil was lifted, the illusion of the protector of the people cracked, and underneath, the source argues, people saw the ambition.
The final image in the text is really somber. It says Fani Willis spent the city's fortune trying to destroy the city's future.
And that she tried to classify her ambition as justice. But the source leaves us with this visceral reaction. The taste is unmistakable. It is poison. And now the community must spit it out.
It's a powerful call to action for the listener, really, to reject the narrative they've been fed.
It forces you to look at the whole machine of the legal system and ask, is this designed to protect us? Or is it designed to manage us? Is it a shield? Or is it a sword used by the ambitious?
And that's the question we want to leave you with today. When does prosecution cross the line into persecution? And when ambition is dressed up in the robes of justice, can you tell the difference?
It's a question that matters far beyond Atlanta. It's about how we understand power everywhere.
Thanks for diving deep with us. This was a heavy one, but an important one. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.